Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Sorry for the long hiatus, as I said, I had to take a break and help take care of my dad for a few weeks. Thanks for giving me a chance with your continued support. I hope we can continue to grow as a community together. Massive thanks to the authors, Roxi2Star and ThatOneZed for allowing me to adapt their awesome story. Follow the link in the description to check out more of their works. Today we will be listening to the 7th part of What If Deku Had Both One for All and All for One. If you enjoy, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing down below, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified when videos go live. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Chapter 14, Todoroki Shouto. Chapter by Roxi2Star. Izuku stood across the ring from Todoroki, his encounter with Endeavor still fresh in his mind. He was going to show that smug bastard what a great kid he had, and that Todoroki was strong in spite of him, not because of him. Todoroki looked as ready as Izuku felt. Which honestly, is very. This might be one of the most important fights of his life. It didn't matter if he won or lost the actual fight now. No. His goal has shifted. He told the world he was here. Now it was time to tell Todoroki. Todoroki's face was dark. His heart hurt for him. What he'd shared with Izuku about his home life left him feeling shattered. No child should ever have to endure the abuse Todoroki had. He needed this, and Izuku was going to give this to him. Midnight stood and waved her hand. Even she could feel the tension stretching between them. Start, she cried. Ice was heading towards him. He expected this. He planned for this. It was going to suck, but he had to do it. He readied his hand, gripping his wrist, and fired off a flick. The effect was immediate, ice breaking and shards flying everywhere. It flew backwards with massive amounts of pressure. He activated full cowling, and ran with the wind towards Todoroki. Todoroki had made ice behind him to keep himself from blowing back. Smart. Izuku was fast with full cowling, but Todoroki was ready. Another huge blast of ice. Another sacrificed finger. The pain was crippling, but he didn't care. He was getting in closer. Only a few feet now. A third ice blast. A third shattered finger. But he was close enough now. A one-for-all enhanced punch to the face had to hurt. Todoroki hissed, his right hand grabbing Izuku's left wrist, ice encapsulating his whole arm. It was cold. He didn't care. He flexed his arm, breaking the ice in several places so he could move more freely. He used pull to get a hold of Todoroki's collar, then twisted his right hand into a fist and punched him square in the nose. The resulting crack in the pool of blood confirmed he'd just broken it. Sorry, Todoroki. But Izuku didn't let up, punching him in his nose again. Todoroki cried out in pain, his right hand pushing Izuku's chest and icing up his front. The cold shock made Izuku drop him and bounce back several feet, which only allowed Todoroki to send another blast of ice at him. Izuku didn't have time to think, and sent the full power of one for all through his right arm. The wind blast was massive. The ice shattered, as did his arm. Todoroki was near the edge of the stadium, barely hanging onto the edge with his ice wall behind him. His eyes raked over his body. Todoroki was freezing faster than normal. If he didn't start using his fire soon, Izuku would win. He didn't care that his entire right arm was broken as well as most of the fingers on his left hand. Anger bubbled to the surface. Quit screwing around! Izuku yelled, running back into the fray. Another ice blast, smaller this time. Izuku flicked two of his mangled broken fingers on his right hand. There was no pain at that moment. The ice shattered. You won't beat me if you don't give it everything you have. You haven't put a goddamn scratch on me yet, he snarled. I want to use his power, Todoroki insisted, sending more ice his way. Izuku shattered it with broken fingers. Not with his quirk. I'll only use my ice. Izuku groaned. You idiot, he yelled, it's one quirk. It's only one quirk. He grabbed Todoroki by the collar again, pulling him up from where he leaned against the ice. Listen to me. When I took your quirk, I only found one to take. Just one quirk. One power. Endeavor has a fire quirk, but you're the one with a half ice half fire quirk, Shouto. It's not his fire, or his quirk. He dropped Todoroki back down to the ground. How could he get Todoroki to understand? It's yours, he screamed. It's your power. Everything happened in slow motion. Todoroki's eyes widened, his mouth opening in surprise. As if he'd never considered that option. Izuku let full cowling flow through his body, green electricity sparking around him. He readied himself for the finishing blow. Then, Todoroki smiled. It was strained, his face was bloody from his broken nose. It must hurt. Fire exploded from his left side. "You're insane," Todoroki said. He was so enthralling to look at, covered in the glow from his own flames. It was blinding. "Don't blame me for what happens next." Izuku only grinned. Just a few moments prior. Shouto's face hurt. He was so cold. His nose was broken and his ice was freezing him faster than it had ever before. Midoriya was beating him to a pulp and his ice was doing almost nothing to him. No matter how much he threw his way, it was shattered. Midoriya must have a higher pain tolerance than he thought. He sent another blast of ice. It was shattered, though Midoriya must be losing control. He'd used his entire right arm instead of just a finger. The power released was like nothing he's seen before. However, Shouto had to cling to the edge of the ring with all his might to keep from being blasted away by the wind pressure. He looked up. Midoriya was running head-on towards him. He sent more ice. Midoriya flicked it away with broken fingers. He was insane. "You won't beat me if you don't give it everything you have. You haven't put a goddamn scratch on me yet," he snarled. I want to use his power," Shouto insisted, sending more ice his way. Why didn't he understand? This fire quirk was evil. It was his father, a literal part of his father burning him from the inside out. Midoriya shattered it with broken fingers. Not with his quirk. "I'll only use my ice." Midoriya groaned. "You idiot," he yelled, "it's one quirk. It's only one quirk." He grabbed Shouto by the collar again, pulling him up from where he leaned against the ice. "Listen to me. When I took your quirk, I only found one to take. Just one quirk. One power. Endeavor has a fire quirk, but you're the one with a half ice half fire quirk." Shouto. "It's not his fire, or his quirk." He dropped Shouto back down to the ground. "One quirk? Just because it was one quirk?" Midoriya cut off his train of thought with the most important words Shouto would ever hear in his life. "It's yours," he screamed, "it's your power." A memory bubbled to the surface. He was a little kid, sitting in his mother's lap watching the news. Seeing All Might on TV, talking about inheriting quirks from parents. "You can be a hero, Shouto." His mother's words echoed in his mind, swirling with the ones Midoriya just told him. Midoriya looked absolutely feral, mangled limbs, blood on his knuckles and shirt, eyes stuck to his chest and arm. Though at the moment, he looked downright angelic. His mind re-examined the words. "Yours. Your power. It was his power. This fire, it wasn't Endeavor's. Nothing about Shouto belonged to Endeavor. He was a person. A person with likes and dislikes and feelings and thoughts and wants and hopes and dreams. He wasn't a tool." Fire burst from his left side. He was smiling. "You're insane," Shouto told him, standing properly. "Don't blame me for what happens next." Midoriya bared his teeth in a minical grin. It was as attractive as it was unnerving. The other boy conjured his shield. It crackled with energy as he rushed in for the attack. Shouto exploded, fire and ice pouring from his body at a rate he didn't know was possible. Distantly he heard Midnight scream, "They'll kill each other." But Shouto pressed on. He couldn't stop now if he wanted to. His body was moving on its own to show Midoriya what he wrought upon himself. To use this fire. Shouto's body felt like it was boiling and freezing all at once. Everything hurt, his entire body was hurting so badly. Yet at the same time, it felt so right. It was exhilarating. He almost didn't want this moment to end. He and Midoriya, here in this dance together. He wanted this. He wanted to show the world that this power was his. He'd never had anything all on his own before. But Midoriya was right. He had to be right. Otherwise, what was the point? He'd come this far. The fire inside him burned brighter. Out of the corner of his eye, Shouto watched as his flames, his quirk, burned so hot and so bright they turned blue around his body. The further out they'd get, the more orange and red they turned. But here, close to his skin where he burned the hottest, it was blue. Not even Endeavor burns this hot. Concrete was put between them, just before everything went white in the resulting explosion. Xiaodo was thrown back, but he used his eyes to keep himself in the ring. Was there even a ring anymore? It didn't matter. When everything cleared, he was standing upright. He was vaguely aware his shirt had been destroyed. The smoke dissipated, and Midoriya was out of the ring. He'd been slammed against the back wall of the stadium. His arms were broken. He was unconscious. That stupid boy. He'd destroyed his own body for what? To make a point? No. Xiaodo realized at once. He did it because he cared. Midoriya cared about Xiaodo more than his own well-being. No one had cared about him that deeply since maybe his mother. He hoped he hadn't hurt him too badly. Xiaodo wanted to run to him, to pick him up gently and get him medical attention. He wanted to hold him. Kiss him. Oh. Oh. So that's what's been wrong with him. He wasn't ill. Midoriya didn't have a quirk to make his body act up. He liked him. Xiaodo liked him. Xiaodo sat outside of Recovery Girl's office on the floor. He leaned against the wall, his face now clean and bandaged. He'd get proper healing later, after the tournament. Meanwhile, Midoriya was in surgery. He'd practically turned his arms into soup while fighting Xiaodo. Why did he do that? Selfishly though, it made him feel warm on the inside. He looked down at his left hand, stretching the fingers and calling on the flame, letting it dance around his fingers. He closed his fist, snuffing out the fire. He felt less sure without Midoriya screaming it at him. He wished he were here in the hallway with him right now. Actually, what was Xiaodo going to do the next time he saw Midoriya? He liked him. Romantically. He probably had for a while now, but he especially did now that he'd opened his eyes. Midoriya had taken his entire world and shattered it in the span of about 5 minutes. Xiaodo couldn't even say he minded. Footsteps pulled Xiaodo from his thoughts. Midoriya-san turned the corner. His sharp red eyes spotted him on the floor. How is he? He asked. In surgery, Xiaodo said softly. I'm sorry. Midoriya-san only shook his head. He walked over, and sat on the ground next to Xiaodo. Don't. It's okay. Aizu knew what he was doing. This isn't your fault. My kid is just stubborn. Though, this is only gonna make him worse. He got what he wanted. Xiaodo's head shot up. What? He wanted to help you, Midoriya-san said. He said he wanted to give you something of yourself back. He turned to look down at Xiaodo. Being trapped under Midoriya-san's gaze was worse than his son's. With Midoriya it was, well, he supposed it was exciting. Midoriya-san was a bit scary if he were being honest with himself. Sharp red eyes that poured into you. Then his look softened, and suddenly Xiaodo could see the resemblance between his crush and his father. So, how do you feel? How did he feel? Confused, he said simply. I'm not sure if I should be proud or disappointed in myself. Another thing Midoriya and his father had in common, it seems, was the ability to make Xiaodo spill his guts. I never wanted to use his fire, but it's my fire, isn't it? That's right, Midoriya-san said. I tell Izuku that all the time. When he stresses about his quirk. How to use it, when to use it and why. It's his now, he said, which seemed to imply something, but that was a thought for another day. He gets to decide how to use it. And as long as he's using it for good, then it doesn't matter, does it? I made him use it today, Xiaodo said, so please don't be upset with him. I asked him to take my fire quirk. It didn't work, so he gave my quirk back right away, but... Midoriya-san nodded, but otherwise didn't react to the news that his son had broken a promise. But... ever since my quirk has been acting up. It's stronger, Xiaodo explained. Midoriya-san frowned at that. He bit down on his lower lip, then began to mutter. Just like Aizawa then. I wonder, is Aizu's different? Pull is way stronger than Inko's ever was. Wait, that didn't happen until he got O. His eyes widened, seemingly forgetting that Xiaodo was there at all. That could explain it. I'll have to talk to Tosh, but... he started a little when he saw Xiaodo watching him. You said it's stronger? I did notice some of the flames closer to your body had turned blue. Will you be able to control it today? He asked. We can pull you from the tournament if you think you need it. Xiaodo grimaced at that thought. I don't want to be pulled. My father won't like it, he said softly. But... do you think I could hurt someone if I don't? Midoriya-san frowned. Aizu is hurt pretty badly already. Though that's mostly his own fault. You're fighting Ida next, since the support girl conceded. Honestly Todoroki, it's your call. Don't worry about your father, I'll handle him if you decide you want us to pull you. We can even say it was me that made the call if you want. But what's your professional opinion? In my professional opinion, if you don't think you have full control over your quirk, you shouldn't use it on another person, he said. I hope I don't sound biased as the father of the kid you just took down, but you could hurt yourself too. The backlash of your quirk is stronger too, right? Shoto nodded. Right. I think you should drop out before you hurt yourself or the other contestants. But, next week why don't we schedule you a few extra appointments with me and we'll run some tests on this new stronger version of your quirk, okay? He smiled and everything felt like it would be alright. I'm in your corner, kiddo. Shoto did not know how to deal with all of this. Thank you, he said stiffly. Midoriya-san only smirked. I'm sure Aizo would love to help too. Give you a good target for your quirk. Shoto's face turned red, fire sparking up his left side as he sputtered. Midoriya-san just laughed good-naturedly. I'm serious, All Might, Hisashi began, looking up at his friend. He stood across from him in his muscled form, too far out in the open to risk deflating. Aizoku's intuition about Todoroki was 100% correct, he said, the kid is obviously being abused at home. All Might frowned. That's a very serious accusation, he replied. As much as I'd love to get him out of that house immediately, I don't know what we can do without physical proof. Endeavor is a highly respected hero, and has a lot of influence. Even if I came out against him, it would still be dragged out, he sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. The media circus would have a field day with it, and the strain it would put on young Todoroki, not just from the emotional point of view, but his public image as hero would be massive. While most people would be highly sympathetic, yes, he would always be seen as a victim. Hisashi nodded. I know. It was the brutal truth of the hero industry. Weakness, while not openly hated, was punished. Our hands are tied unless he seeks it out. It was a terrible situation. No right answers. Every option hurt Todoroki, whether it was now or in the future. There has to be something I can do for him. They stood in silence for a moment. Perhaps just knowing he has an adult he can trust will be enough. It might be. There was still more. He remembered how Todoroki sat there next to him, eyes hopeful for what might be the first time in ages. I think I can bully Endeavor a little. Todoroki also mentioned his quirk has been acting up. Apparently he asked Aizoku to use it on him to try and get rid of his fire, but Aizoku could only take the whole quirk, not half. But ever since then, his quirk has gotten stronger. I think I know why, but I will have to talk to Aizoku to be sure. A look passed onto All Might's face for a moment. His brows furrowed. I see. I think I know what you're getting at. But I'll have to look into a few things as well to be sure. He crossed his arms and thought. Someone was stomping towards them. Hisashi glanced to the side, and from around the bend came the very topic of conversation. Endeavor. He was tall, broad, and if Hisashi were being objective he'd be inclined to say he was good-looking. Or at least he would be if he didn't keep his face on fire. Hisashi turned to face him, meeting his gaze. Endeavor came right up to them. Move, Endeavor growled in a low voice. Not so fucking fast, Hisashi snarled. It was harder without all his quirks, but Hisashi found that when he wanted people to be afraid of him, they were. I know what you're here for. You want to make Shoto go back into the festival. Of fucking course I am. Dropping out, and I suppose you're the one who okayed this? Endeavor asked, glaring at him. He glared back. I'm the one who's insisting. Shoto doesn't want to drop out. I'm forcing him as his quirk counselor because if he were to continue in the festival he could seriously hurt himself or another student. In fact, he already has due to the sudden changes in his quirk. Something in Endeavor's face changed. He leaned back from Hisashi, his voice growing quiet. You're the one who helped him get his quirk to that level. Yes, he snapped, back to the subject at hand. Shoto cannot compete because he's already hurt someone. Endeavor rolled his eyes. Oh, the green-haired kid? He did a lot of damage to Shoto first. My son is currently in surgery. Shoto on the other hand has a broken nose. They are not comparable injuries. Not to say I blame Shoto. Sometimes quirks go out of control, especially at their age and under his pressure, he said. But I cannot allow you to continue. Endeavor glared and puffed up his chest. Oh, So this is you attempting to get revenge for your son. Angry that my son dethroned him and put him in his place. Revenge? Revenge? This absolute piece of human garbage thought he was just in it for revenge because his son lost a school competition? Hisashi liked to consider himself a composed person. But to push your child in a dangerous situation, where they themselves or the people around them could be seriously hurt. To call yourself a parent when you physically lay your hands on a child? Hisashi was reminded of his own father. He couldn't remember a lot of the details, but he remembered the abuse he as the elder brother had endured to keep Yoichi safe. Hisashi couldn't be blamed for snapping. He growled and went to grab at Endeavor. But large warm arms picked Hisashi up off the ground. Hisashi, please, All Might whispered in his ear. Hisashi was too angry to even appreciate being held like this. He thrashed in All Might's grip, fire threatening to fall out of his mouth. Smoke poured from his teeth. It was mildly embarrassing. He hadn't lost control of a quirk since he was a teenager. All Might, put me down. He yelled through the smoke. I'd like to have a few more words. More smoke poured out. With Endeavor here. Hisashi. All Might said more firmly. Why don't you go see if Izuku is out of surgery yet? That snapped him out of it. Right. He couldn't attack Endeavor. Hisashi was strong, but he wouldn't last. Endeavor could overheat, but he wouldn't burn. Not like Hisashi would. Only the inside of his mouth was fireproof. He let out a low growl but nodded. All Might let him down. He turned to Endeavor. He still had a kid to protect. Let me take Shadow home for the weekend. His quirk is going haywire, and if he wants to go to his classes on Monday, he'll need to get himself to a point where his quirk is under control. The fastest way to do that is some intense one-on-one sessions. You want my son for a weekend? Endeavor asked, his eyes wide. He nodded. I'll have him back to a safe place by Monday. Unless you'd rather him be put on suspension. NG snarled. Fine. But if he's not in classes first thing on Monday, I swear to God. Hisashi walked right into his space, getting up on his toes to get into his face. He was going to put this fucking abuser in his place. What? What will you do, Endeavor? Beat me up too? Endeavor's eyes grew wide. That's right, asshole. Hisashi wasn't about to play around. Fucking try it, he growled, as more smoke left his lips. Unlike children, I punch back. He focused every fiber of his being into making sure Endeavor understood that Midoriya Hisashi was not to be fucked with. Endeavor backed away out of his space in retreat. Okay, he said, take him. He leaned back as well, settling back onto his feet. He smirked up at him. I'm going to the boys. Goodbye, Endeavor, he said and turned on his heel. He grabbed All Might by the hand and pulled him off, leaving Endeavor in the dust. Izuku's entire body ached. It wasn't an unfamiliar feeling though. He grumbled, trying to push himself up, but found his arms had been bound and casted in front of his body. Sitting up would have to wait. Instead, he settled for opening his eyes. The room was bright. Too bright for his tastes. Where was he? What happened? Oh right. Sports festival. He'd gone toe-to-toe with Todoroki, and lost. He remembered goading the boy into using his flames. He also remembered the way he smiled. Totally worth the pain, though he did feel bad for losing. Yagi-san had been depending on him to make a splash. Then again, he won 2 of the 3 rounds and his fight with Todoroki must have been a spectacle. Oh good, you're awake, a soft voice said from next to him. Midoriya-san, he's awake. Todoroki was in the seat next to the bed Izuku was laid up in. Izuku flushed lightly, his eyes moving to look at him. He looked worse for wear, a large piece of gauze taped over his nose. Right. Izuku had broken it. He had other injuries as well, but they looked minor. His dad appeared next to Todoroki. He was smiling softly as he leaned over Izuku, smoothing the hair from his face. Gave us all a real scare there, kiddo, he said. Recovery girl is with another patient right now, but I'm sure she'll be here in a minute to yell at you. You really did a number on yourself this time. Sorry Dad, he mumbled. God, he was a mess. Dad shook his head. Don't worry. You did a great job. Wish you'd break your arms less, but still, he leaned down to whisper, I think you had a profound effect on your friend here. Good job, kiddo. Izuku flushed again, his eyes flicking back to Todoroki. He sat watching stoically as he normally did. How long have I been out? What happened? Did you place? Todoroki shook his head. I conceded after our match. My quirk is acting strange. Midoriya-san thought it was unwise for me to continue so others wouldn't get hurt. As for the festival, it's over, Dad finished. Ended with a whimper, I'm afraid. Well, to be fair, I suppose it did end with a bang actually. A lot of bangs, since Todoroki here can't compete. Ida was going to move on to the finals, but he had a family emergency so he also had to concede. And Katsuki won his fight against Tokoyami. That meant Kiken won by default. Izuku finished. Oh man, he must be pissed. He had to be forcibly restrained, Todoroki said, a ghost of a smile on his lips. It was very funny. Izuku sighed deeply. I'll fight him later this week. Let him take out some aggression on me. Once the casts come off, I mean. Is that why you fight him? Todoroki asked. So he has an outlet. No, that's not the main reason, Izuku said. I do genuinely like our street fights. Kiken's fighting style is intense and it's a great workout. I mean, don't get me wrong, the fact he's a lot calmer after a fight helps a lot. It's like walking a dog, but in this case the dog is a person, and that person is also my childhood best friend. They don't have the healthiest relationship, Dad deadpanned. I'm working on it. Something occurred to Izuku. Wait, if the festival is over, how come you're still here? He asked Todoroki. You said you dropped out. Oh god, what about your dad? Before either his dad or Todoroki could respond, Recovery Girl appeared. You. I told you, over and over, be more careful with your hands. Well, you've done it now. You're lucky I was able to salvage as much as I could, but your right hand is likely to scar and look mildly deformed. Beyond that, you'll probably experience numbness, and a loss of fine motor skills in that hand, she yelled. You're worse than All Might. Listen to me, the next time you seriously injure that hand it could do more damage. You could paralyze it. Then where would you be? She asked. Izuku cringed. I'm going to be more careful. I'm sorry. Don't apologize to me, I'm not the one who might cripple their own hand, she said, then turned on Todoroki. And you? I haven't been able to yell at you properly yet either. You knew your quirk had been acting up, right? All that ice you used on Zero, and you still thought you should continue? I understand this festival is a big deal for your careers, but you could have seriously hurt someone, or yourself. As a matter of fact, you did. She pointed to Izuku. Not to mention you burned yourself pretty badly on your left side, and your right nearly had frostbite. I'm sorry, Todoroki said, hanging his head down. I didn't realize the depths of my actions. Nor did I understand how much my quirk has been acting up. She patted his shoulder. You're forgiven. Just don't let it happen again. Listen to your body next time. Speaking of, how's that illness of yours? Todoroki did something Izuku had never seen him do before, at least not this close, and this sure it was happening. He blushed. His entire face flushed to the point Izuku was shocked his scar and hair hadn't caught on fire. His eyes flicked to Izuku for a brief second before he whispered, I'm fine. I figured it out. Thank you for your concern. Let's never speak of this again. Recovery Girl laughed loudly. Todoroki only flushed deeper, placing his face in his hands. Finally, she turned to Dad. He's awake now, so you're welcome to take him home for the weekend. She looked back at Izuku. Come see me early Monday morning, and we'll get you healed up the rest of the way. Be gentle with yourself. No training this weekend. I've already told off All Might. With that, she left them, chuckling lowly all the while. He bit his lip before he looked back at Todoroki. So, what happened with your dad? Are you okay? Todoroki nodded. I'm okay. I promise. I haven't actually seen him since before I fought Zero. Your dad and All Might have been keeping him at bay. All Might is probably talking to him right now. Dad smirked. Some of my finest work, Izu, he said. I got to yell at Endeavor. Anyway, we've been basically telling him to piss off, that Todoroki can't fight until his quirk is under control. Somehow I convinced the man to let us take Todoroki home for the weekend under the condition we get him back into fighting shape before your internships start, but we have a bit until then. Wait. No. Todoroki is staying the weekend, he asked. He couldn't have this pretty boy in his house. His room was an embarrassing shrine. And Todoroki would have to sleep in there on the guest futon. That's usually where Kikan slept when he spent the night, so of course Todoroki would be sleeping in his room. Oh god, oh fuck, oh god, shit damn it, how was he supposed to sleep with Todoroki in the same room with him, and oh god, the All Might endorsed lotion. How could he look at Todoroki and the All Might lotion together in the same room? Said object of Izuku's lotion-fueled affections frowned. If it'll be too much trouble, I don't have to. No. Izuku said. He could brave some minor embarrassment if it meant keeping him away from his abusive asshole father for a while, even just a few days, he'd bear it. That's great. We'll be so happy to have you. We should take him to Akira's for Katsuden. Izuku grinned, looking at his dad, who nodded. He looked back at Todoroki. That's the Saturday ritual. Training then good food. I'd say let's go bowling too, but, he looked down at himself, I'd need a hand. Sounds like a plan. Can you help me with Todoroki's quirk training? I could use another brain to bounce ideas off of. Plus I know for a fact you have a lot of notes on his quirk already, Dad said. You take notes on our quirks? Todoroki asked. Yeah, I have a lot of them actually. Like 15 pages dedicated to your quirk alone actually. You probably have a lot of weird and crazy applications for your quirk since it's so versatile. It's the kind that once I start writing about it I just can't stop. Dad stood, a smile playing on his face. I'm gonna go find All Might, he said. I'll meet you two by the car in like a half hour, okay? 'Kay Dad, Izuku said. His father left, leaving him and Todoroki alone. Izuku sat up and pushed himself back to rest on the headboard. I'm glad you're gonna be with us, he said honestly. I almost wish it was permanent. Why? Todoroki asked. Won't it be difficult to have a house guest? Izuku shook his head. It's fine. Yagi-san is over half the time, and Kikan sleeps over from time to time, so we're used to having guests. Why? I don't want you to ever have to go back home to that man. I want you to be free from him. Todoroki looked down. Why do you care so much? He asked softly. You broke your arms just to make me use my fire when you could have won that fight. I told you, Todoroki-kun. You're my friend, whether you like it or not. That's what friends do. They help each other, Izuku said with a smile. Besides, All Might always says sticking your nose in where it doesn't belong, to help someone, is part of what it means to be a hero. He was quiet for a long time after that. Izuku sat and waited. Todoroki clearly wanted to respond, so Izuku would give him all the time in the world to do so. Finally, he spoke. We are friends, he said. I've never had one before. Sorry if I'm not good at it. Tears welled up in Izuku's eyes. He jumped out of the bed and crashed into Todoroki's lap. He shoved his face into his neck. This is a hug. I can't hug you properly without my arms, but that's what this is. A hug. Wrap your arms around me since I can't wrap mine around you. Todoroki was as stiff as a board under him. He gave a shaky inhale, his skin very warm. He smelled like fire. You smell nice, he mumbled softly. Strong arms grabbed him suddenly. They were stiff and a bit awkward, but Izuku found it sweet all the same. This is nice, Todoroki deadpanned. It would be nicer if I had arms. Sorry, he said softly. Don't worry. I knew what I was doing. Plus it was worth it to see you smile. Todoroki didn't say anything after that. He just pulled Izuku deeper into the hug, his arms tightening around him. He could get used to this. Chapter 15, well that's new. Chapter by Roxi2Star. Izuku kicked off his shoes in the front entrance of the house, Todoroki following right behind him. It was so weird having him in his house. It was also weird seeing Todoroki in normal street clothes. His fashion was rather basic, but Izuku had the feeling he didn't get the chance to do a lot of his own clothes shopping. Not that he had just room to talk though. When he wasn't in his school uniform he only wore stupid t-shirts and basketball shorts. Dad was already making his way to the kitchen, his jacket on the coat rack as he loosened his tie around his neck. I'll make dinner tonight. Izu, show Todoroki the guest futon and help him get it into your room, he said, before vanishing into the kitchen. Well, he supposed if he was going to die of embarrassment he should do it sooner rather than later. Here we keep it in the hallway closet, he said as he led Todoroki past the living room into the hall. Sorry, you'll have to actually grab it. He wiggled the bandaged arms in front of him. Someone broke all my bones, he joked. It was me. I broke my bones. Todoroki didn't laugh, but Izuku was pretty sure he saw his lips twitch. He'll take it as a victory. They were friends now, Todoroki had said it himself. His next goal was to make him smile. Or if Izuku was feeling bold, perhaps laugh outright. That would be a sight. Todoroki flushed from laughing too hard at something stupid Izuku told him. Yet, that was his next goal. He opened the closet and grabbed the rolled-up futon. "Where am I sleeping?" "Your room," he asked. He nodded, though it felt like he was signing his death sentence. "Yes, but, listen. You have to promise me you won't laugh, okay?" he said. "I mean it. My room is a bit much." He led Todoroki to the door, the All Might-themed door plate reading Izuku. "Promise you won't judge me." Todoroki looked a bit bewildered, his hand on the doorknob. "I can't see what would possibly make me laugh or judge you. It's just a bee." He opened the door and stopped. His eyes widened. "Midoriya. Are you sure this is your bedroom?" he asked. "Yes, what else would it be? A store. There's so much merch," he said. Izuku's room was an explosion of blue and yellow. All Might's face plastered every inch of the room, the bed sheets, a large blue body pillow that read Plus Ultra, the curtains, and the posters covered the walls so thickly it was unknown what color the wall was. Figures lined the shelves, along with books, movies, and anything even vaguely All Might related. There was merch of other heroes too, especially since Izuku had discovered All Might regularly slept on his couch. The other heroes were few and far between in the mess of his hero fanatic room. At least it was clean. Izuku would never let his collection get dirty or messy looking. The only indication that the room had been used at all was the unmade bed and the mess of books and notes on the blue desk in the corner. "I really like All Might," Izuku defended. "I can tell," Todoroki said before sighing and unrolling the futon. "It's nice. Sweet that you admire him so much." He hesitated a second. I like All Might a lot too. But I was never allowed to buy anything related to him." Izuku nodded. "Yeah, that makes sense," he said, sitting on his bed. "I didn't know you liked All Might." "He's my favorite hero," Todoroki said. "I mean, how can he not be?" "Right?" Izuku asked with wide eyes. "Sure, everyone liked All Might, he was number one for a reason. He's so kind and he always saves people with a smile. He's the type that when you see him you just get filled with hope and know that everything is going to be just fine. He's the kind of hero I want to be." Todoroki sat on the bed next to him. "I like him because you can tell, especially after meeting him in person, that he just genuinely wants to help. That he would do this even if he couldn't have the money or the fame. That's what I want. To help." He looked over to Izuku. "If it means anything, Midoriya," he bit his lip, "I think you're going to be that kind of hero like All Might someday." "You too," he said, nudging him with his shoulder. "So, you don't think the room is stupid or too much?" "No, it definitely is," Todoroki said, his face blank, "but it suits you." "Are you calling me stupid and too much?" "You're not stupid. Your grades are better than mine and I know I'm not stupid, well, at least academically." "You are, in fact, too much, but I don't mind it," he said. "It's almost comforting." "Comforting?" Izuku blushed darkly. That was so sweet. Why was he being so sweet? Todoroki was typically the kind of person to shy away from any kind of niceties. Maybe their fight had a deeper impact than him just using his fire. Only time would tell. "Your dad is a very nice person," Todoroki said, filling the silence. "He's a lot like you." "Well, he is my dad," he said with a smile before quickly adding, "I mean, not that every son is just like his dad. We're different in a lot of ways too, I mean. It's fine. I know you didn't mean to imply that me and my father were alike," Todoroki cut him off. "It's entirely possible my father and I do share personality traits. It's not like everything about him is inherently evil." Izuku nodded. "Yeah, exactly. Just because your dad is an on-fire trash can doesn't mean everything he's ever done or everything that's ever come from him is bad. I mean, you came from him and you're great, Todoroki-kun." That made Todoroki raise an eyebrow. "I'm great?" he asked. "You think so?" "From day one," Izuku said with a smile. "I mean, at first I thought you were a bit full of yourself, but I know I was totally off base. But even back then I still thought you were cool as hell. Now I think you're cool, and sweet." "Boys." Dad called from the hall. "Food." "Coming, Dad," Izuku said, and stood up and waited for Todoroki to follow. They sat together across from his dad at the kitchen table. Dad served them both. "It's nothing special, but please eat. You two had a very long day," he said before his phone rang in his pocket. He pulled it out with a sigh. "I better take this," he said. "You two eat, I'll be gone for a while," he answered. "Hello Midoriya speaking. Yes, hello Endeavor." "Yes, he's fine. Yes, of course. Yes, will you shut up and listen to me?" he asked, leaving the kitchen, his voice fading before Izuku heard him step outside the apartment entirely. Todoroki shifted next to him uncomfortably in front of him. "I'm sorry if I'm a burden." No, Todoroki-kun, not at all. Dad can handle Endeavor, no problem," he said. "If he couldn't, we wouldn't have insisted you come home with us," he smiled. Todoroki shrugged and simply stared at his plate of food as if it held the answers to the universe. Izuku looked down at his own food. Then at his bandaged hands that were crossed in front of him. "It seems I've made a miscalculation." Todoroki simply picked up his own chopsticks before grabbing a piece of meat from Izuku's plate. "Here. Open up." Blood rushed to Izuku's face. He was being fed. Fed by Todoroki Shoto. That was too much. He'd die. It was so intimate. But what was the alternative? Eat like a pig? Not happening. Wait for his dad to get back and have him feed him? Worse. Are you sure? He asked. "What about you?" "I'll eat. Don't worry. Now open your mouth," Todoroki commanded. A shudder ran through Izuku's body before his mouth opened without his permission. "Good," he said, feeding him gently. Izuku looked down at his meal. Man, this was going to lead to some weird boners later. As Izuku chewed and swallowed, Todoroki used the same chopsticks he'd just used to feed Izuku to eat himself. Then, they moved to Izuku's plate. An indirect kiss. They sat in silence as they ate. Izuku had tried to keep his body under control, but he was a teenager, damn it. He got boners for no reason at all. Of course he was going to get one when the handsome guy who'd just beat him up earlier that day fed him while bossing him around. Why the part about Todoroki beating him up added to it he wasn't sure about, and he didn't think he was emotionally ready to look at that any deeper. Eventually, they cleaned their plates. "Thank you," he said softly. "It's not a problem," Todoroki said, cleaning up their plates and putting them into the sink. "I'm the reason your arms are broken in the first place, so I don't mind feeding you or anything. In the notes recovery girl gave my dad, it said I could take my arms down tomorrow and do basic tasks, but I'll have to be careful until she can give me another round of healing on Monday." He sighed. "Do you want to watch a movie or something before bed?" "Sure," Todoroki said. "I haven't seen many, so you pick." Izuku stood and led him back into the living room. "Ever seen Star Wars?" Todoroki shook his head. "Well, I know what we're doing," he said. "The remote is there, I'll tell you what streaming service to find it on." He motioned to the remote under the TV. "Is that your mother?" Todoroki asked as he walked to grab the remote. Her small shrine was in the corner of the living room. Izuku smiled softly. "Yeah, that's Mom. She's beautiful," he said softly, turning his head to look back at Izuku. "You look just like her." He blushed slightly, curling up on the couch. "Thanks," he said. Todoroki grabbed the remote before sitting next to Izuku. His back was straight, his posture stiff. "We have a shrine in my older brother's old room," he said after a long pause. "Sometimes my dad locks himself inside it." "Your brother died?" he asked softly. "I'm sorry." He shrugged. He died when I was really young. I don't really remember him well enough to even miss him," he said softly. "It's just kind of always been a fact that Tuya is dead. My brother and sister miss him though. They're all a lot closer in age." Dad came back into the apartment, closing the door behind him quietly. "Man, that guy is a piece of shit," he said to himself. Izuku heard him kick off his shoes before coming into the living room. "Sorry, I missed dinner." Watching?" he asked. "I'm sorry about my father," Todoroki said softly. "Nah, don't worry kiddo," he said, leaning on the back of the couch and looking down at them. "I can handle him, no problem. He's just throwing a tantrum since he's not in control right now. I can take tantrums. Besides, I'm your quirk counselor now, so I'm one of the adults in charge of keeping you safe." He smiled. "Enjoy the night off. I'm gonna reheat my food and tomorrow we'll get to work on figuring out your quirk, okay?" Todoroki nodded, looking back down at his lap. Thank you. Izuku smiled softly and knocked their shoulders together. We're in your corner, Todoroki-kun. Izuku was dead on his feet. He hadn't realized how tired he was when he crawled into bed. He laid flat on his back, attempting to kick his blanket over him. Todoroki was sitting on his futon next to the bed. Do you want help? He asked, but he got up on his knees before Izuku could answer. He laid the comforter out on him. Thanks, Todoroki-kun, Izuku smiled. I think the day is catching up with me. I feel like I could sleep for a week and still be tired. I hope you don't. You'd miss a lot of school, Todoroki replied before laying down on the futon. He pulled his covers up over himself. Good night, Midoriya, he said simply. Izuku watched as he lay on his back, staring up at the ceiling. He was straight as a board, his hands gently fisting the cover he'd laid over top of him. Izuku watched him for a long moment before turning on his side gently. Are you all right, Todoroki-kun? He didn't look back at Izuku. I'm fine, he said in a low voice. I've never slept anywhere that wasn't my father's house before, that's all. Other than the hospital, he admitted. It's both exhilarating and nerve-wracking. My body doesn't seem to want to relax. I can understand that, Izuku said. I hope I can sleep with my arms like this. Usually, I cling to my body pillow, but no clinging without arms. Todoroki finally looked at him, brows furrowed. You sleep with a body pillow? Yeah. Usually, I'm on my side and I'll cling around it with my arms and legs. Honestly, I feel bad for my future spouse. Whoever I end up married to is probably gonna end up spending their nights with me wrapped around them like an octopus, Izuku said. A long moment of silence passed before Todoroki said, that doesn't sound too bad. No. Izuku asked with a smile. That's good to know. He turned back to lay on his back. Well, I'm gonna try and sleep. Good night, Todoroki-kun. Night. He said before he turned over as well. Shoto was having a crisis. Apparently a gay crisis. Was he even gay? He liked Midoriya, that's for sure. Ever since his revelation earlier today at the sports festival where he realized he was attracted to Midoriya, he's suddenly found that the boy has taken a permanent hold in his thoughts. It's been all-consuming. Though to be fair, in rapid succession he fought him, knocked him out, hurt him so badly to the point where he needed surgery, and had a long talk with his father. Said father then went to bed to get Shoto away from his own probably very pissed father since he dropped from the festival, spent the day in his home, hand-fed him, watched movies in his living room, and now he was laying on his bedroom floor. Kind of hard to get him out of his head when he's quite literally drowning in him. Though this constant presence of Midoriya wasn't bad. Anything but really. He was so kind. Had he always been this kind? He'd certainly been drawn to him before today. Before his revelation, he'd chalked it up to him being a strong rival with a connection to All Might. Now looking back, it was obvious part of it was he found Midoriya to be insanely good-looking. Their fight in their first foundational hero training stuck out to him. Holy shit, had he been an idiot. He can't believe he has to admit it, but Bakugo was right. He had been enthralled by his spandex-clad ass. Damn it. He was never telling him he was right. So, he liked Midoriya. What should he do with this information? He stared up at the ceiling of his bedroom, All Might surrounding him from all angles. He figured that ought to creep him out, but honestly, he found the merged-out room to be quite endearing. Midoriya was passionate and one-track-minded, much like himself. Plus his minor All Might obsession was harmless and quite frankly, cute. Midoriya himself was cute. Round-faced and freckled with white eyes. Especially in his school uniform, which appeared too big on him. He knew now because Midoriya's shoulders were so solid and broad that the rest of the jacket was too big in comparison. He was getting distracted. That was unlike him. Midoriya was so distracting. What should he do? He liked Midoriya. That was a big deal, right? What do people even do with the people they like? Shoto pondered quietly. Normal people date the people they like, right? Did he want that? What did people even do on dates? If the small amount of media he's consumed told him anything, they ate together and then kissed. That didn't sound so bad. He and Midoriya had just eaten together today. Shoto got to feed him since his arms were broken. He's unsure if he should blame himself or not. Midoriya claims he knew what he was doing and decided to do it despite the risks. However, if it hadn't been for Shoto and his hang-ups he might not have felt the need to shatter every bone in his body. Could he kiss Midoriya? He glanced toward him. He seemed to be out cold. Shoto watched his face, the outline of his lips barely seen in the low light of the room. They often looked red and chapped from how often he would bite his lip. Oh god, he bit his lip all the time, didn't he? It was attractive, but otherwise soft. What would it feel like? What if his lips were wet? Then again, would that be bad? It wasn't like he had any frame of reference for this. He vaguely remembered kissing his mother when he was a child, but even then he couldn't recall any kind of sensation. He also assumed kissing someone was attracted to would be an entirely different experience. The thought of kissing Midoriya was pleasant, he decided. He at the very least wanted to try and see how it felt. So, eating food and kissing? He could do that. Wait. He was forgetting something. Sex. Couples had sex with each other. At least eventually. Could he do that? It would mean being seen and touched. A daunting task really. But he certainly wouldn't hate seeing Midoriya in less clothes. Once again the image of the bunny ears and tail flashed in his mind. Wait, why do I like that? He mumbled aloud. That doesn't seem normal. Oh well. Who cared about that anyway? It was an exciting prospect nonetheless. So yes. He was reasonably sure he'd like to have sex with Midoriya. Or at the very least just look at his naked body. Maybe touch it. He'd cross that bridge when he came to it. So, yes. He could handle dating. Would it get in the way of his hero studies? Would it get in Midoriya's way? Well, if they're both in the same class, they'll likely have a lot of the same free time, so that would make dates easy. As long as they could make it work, he'd be interested. So yes. He wanted to date Midoriya. To be his boyfriend. How does one go about getting someone to be their boyfriend? Wait, did Midoriya like men? He was pretty sure most people weren't attracted to the same gender. Kaminari was bisexual, which a quick Google search revealed having an attraction to men and women. Did that make Shoto gay or bisexual? He liked men. At the very least he liked Midoriya. Was he attracted to other men? Actually, had he ever been attracted to a woman? He didn't think so. He quickly went over his classmates in his head. He supposed all of the girls were pretty, in their own sort of way. But no, he could honestly say he wasn't attracted to any of them. He thought to the boys. Midoriya, obviously, was very good looking and Shoto was most definitely attracted to him. Zero crossed his mind. He was handsome. Shoto rather liked his hair, it seemed soft. His figure was athletic and lithe in a way Shoto enjoyed. Not to mention his laid-back attitude was soothing. Ida also crossed his mind. Tall, and broad in a way that made Shoto feel small. He didn't hate that. Ida was handsome with a square masculine face and kind eyes. Kaminari had a boyish charm that made him rather endearing despite how loud and rather dim he was sometimes. Shoto could honestly say he liked his company, if only because it was entertaining. Kirishima was, as Midoriya bluntly put it, stacked. His muscles were not only admirable but rather attractive. His positive manly attitude was rather enjoyable. It was infectious enough that even Shoto felt a bit more energized after a talk with him. Even Bakugo was attractive. Shoto may not care for his personality, but even he had to admit he had a nice body and face. Oh shit, Shoto was gay. Well, that's fine. Endeavor would hate that. Not because Endeavor hated gay people, but because that meant Shoto couldn't take a wife with a strong quirk to produce better heroes. Not that he was going to do that anyway. Shoto didn't want children. At all. He honestly didn't like kids and therefore would be a terrible father. Plus no child deserved to have a father that didn't love them. So no kids. So Shoto was gay, and he wanted to date Midoriya. He could ask him out on a date. That's what people did, right? No wait, there was usually a confession first, wasn't there? A romantic sunlit moment where you say how much you like the object of your affection and they either accept you or turn you down. Oh shit, what would happen if he got turned down? Would it make things weird? Would Midoriya stop talking to him? He just got him as a friend today and he was already attached. He couldn't lose Midoriya. Oh no, he couldn't confess unless he was certain his confession would be accepted. How could he figure that out? He supposed he'd have to see if Midoriya was even attracted to men. Then if Midoriya was attracted to him. He'd also have to make sure he didn't currently have a romantic partner. As well as if Midoriya was even searching for a romantic partner. They were just in high school after all. Midoriya could just want to focus on his studies. He was rather one-track minded, and very clearly zeroed in on becoming a hero. He had investigations to make. Xiaodo woke up the next morning feeling more well-rested than he had in weeks. He sat up slowly, yawning as he went to grab his phone. His eyes widened. It was already almost 10. He looked to the bed behind him, only to find it empty. Midoriya was up and had elected to let him sleep in. This was much later than Endeavor let him sleep. He only slept late when the bastard was out of town. He stood and reached into the overnight bag Fuyamai had packed him, grabbing his fresh clothes. He put on deodorant, brushed his hair, and threw on his clean clothes. He walked out into the hallway. Quiet voices drifted from the kitchen. He could also smell something cooking. He walked slowly into the kitchen. Midoriya-san was cooking eggs on the stove as Midoriya himself sat at the kitchen table messing with the bandages wrapped around his arms. They were still covered, but no longer needed to be bound to his chest. His fingers could be moved somewhat. Xiaodo probably wouldn't be able to feed him now. Disappointing. "Oh, good morning, Todoroki-kun," Midoriya said with a bright and cheery smile. "Cute. I was just about to come and wake you up. Breakfast is almost done." He sat next to him at the table. "I'm surprised you didn't wake me up sooner. Aren't we starting on my training today?" he asked. Midoriya-san looked over his shoulder at him. "Yeah, but you two had a big day yesterday. Besides, it's not that late. I booked us for a field at UA at noon today, so we have plenty of time before we have to head over there." He placed the eggs over top rice for each of them and set the plates down in front of them, then gave his son an affectionate head ruffle. Xiaodo couldn't remember the last time someone ruffled his hair. "Eat up, boys." Xiaodo ate his quickly, glancing at Midoriya. He seemed to be having a hard time holding his chopsticks. His fingers didn't seem able to move like they used to. "Damn," he mumbled softly, "I was hoping she was exaggerating." "You've lost some fine motor skills," he asked. Midoriya nodded. "My hand just won't move the way I want it to. I hope as it heals it's better. I think I can reteach myself though. Oh man, writing is gonna be a bitch. I wonder if Aizawa-sensei will allow me to bring my laptop." His father interjected. "I'd imagine he'd be fine with it. If you want I can ask for you." "It's fine. I'll ask him on Monday," Midoriya said, waving his father off. "Now I guess I should just get a spoon or something." "Want me to feed you again?" Xiaodo asked before he could stop himself. Midoriya blushed deeply but did give a curt nod. His father coughed into his hand. "Well, I'm gonna go make a phone call," he said, grabbing his own plate that he'd just finished making and promptly leaving the room. Midoriya himself was blushing even deeper than before, mumbling under his breath. Xiaodo cocked his head, simply grabbing a bite of food from Midoriya's plate. He didn't seem to be paying attention. He brought the bite up to his mouth. "Open," he ordered. That caught his attention. The blush now covered his entire face as he obediently opened his mouth. "Say thank you." "Thank you," Midoriya said, his voice hoarse. He jumped in his chair, looking away and mumbling again. "Well, that's new, gonna have to Google DOMs later." He jerked his attention back to Xiaodo. "Sorry, yes. Thank you." Xiaodo blinked several times, as his stomach rolled at his reaction. His heart rate increased, his own face flushing slightly as well as pooling heat in his well. "That's new indeed. Alright, that's where we'll leave off for the day. Thanks so much for listening along with me today. If you enjoyed, please like and comment down below and check out the video or playlist on the screen for more content from me. I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao for now, lovelies.